Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. I'm really excited today to speak to our guest. Our guest is Jonah Berger, who sort of needs no introduction, but I'll give him a brief one anyway. So Jonah is a marketing professor at Wharton. He's an internationally best-selling author of Contagious, Invisible Influence, and The Catalyst. Contagious was meant in a different context than the coronavirus world we're unfortunately living in. He's a world expert on change, word of mouth influence, consumer behavior, and how products, ideas, and behaviors catch on. He's published a bunch of articles, New York Times, Harvard Business Review, etc. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jonah on with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's sort of dive in here. So you check a lot of the boxes in terms of folks that we work with. So there's the academia piece, which is critical to what you do. Then there's the published authors piece. And then there's speaking and then sort of the other things that you do. So tell us a little bit about sort of the portfolio mix of how you spend your time.
Yeah, so I would say, at the core, I was brought up and taught to be an academic researcher. So, got my PhD from Stanford Graduate School of Business.
Mm-hmm.
Have been at Wharton now for 13 years. Have had tenure for the past 6 or 7. Still am very active on the research side at the moment, doing a lot of work on natural language processing and automated text analysis.
Mm-hmm.
But when Contagious came out now, I guess, 7 years ago,
Yeah.
my life changed. That book was about my research and focused on my research. And I had done some consulting and speaking before that, but relatively minor. But since then, I've had a chance to work with all sorts of companies and organizations, from big Fortune 500s like the Googles and
Mm-hmm.
Apples and Nikes of the world to small startups. I probably speak at between 30 or 50 events a year of varying sizes, from small workshops to
Mm-hmm.
multi-thousand folk event, and really have had an opportunity to learn a lot, both about business, about marketing, about leadership, and a wide variety of domains
Mm-hmm.
from working in these different areas. And so now still obviously do a lot of academic research. About half my time is sort of research and teaching, and the other half is speaking and consulting.
Got it. So let's talk about speaking just for a couple of minutes there, because that's always a topic that's of interest to people. So, speaking to some that haven't been there yet is, it's appealing, it's sexy, it's profitable, it looks glamorous, et cetera, et cetera. And while it must be easy to just get up on stage and get paid a whole lot of money to, talk about what you love for an hour, is that exactly how it looks?
I wish it was that glamorous. Just let me know when it's that glamorous. I'll sign up. It sounds like an advertisement for speaking, almost like when you see an advertisement for an airline. Everyone looks
Yeah.
happy, the bags are on time, and then your real life experience is quite different.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really fun parts about speaking. I love meeting and working with different industries.
Mm-hmm.
I love answering questions. That's actually my favorite thing
Really?
to do. Because you really get to connect the material to where people are and what they're wrestling with.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a lot of less fun parts. The travel's not particularly fun. Saying the same thing sometimes for not the first or second time can get old a little bit. And I also think it's a different style of presenting ideas. It's really about thinking, how can we be both entertaining and engaging, but also really provide valuable information in a short time slot. Sometimes someone will say, oh, we have 30 minutes. Can you both entertain people and give them, 5 key takeaways that they can, transform their business tomorrow? And that's a big ask in 30 minutes.
Yeah,
But
no pressure.
yeah.
And by the way, there's 4,000 of them, and they were out till 2 a.m. last night drinking in Las
Oh,
Vegas.
yes.
But good luck with
Yeah.
that.
You go for it. And so,
Yeah.
there's the different time, as you just pointed out, the different time slots are more and less challenging. So I think there are
Yep.
a lot of really great parts, and there are also some really challenging parts. But I think the fun for me has been learning that new skill. It's made me a better teacher, it's
Yep.
made me a presenter in other contexts, and it's been fun to kind of get better at that area that I wasn't necessarily as good at to start with.
So talk about sort of two pieces on the business side of speaking. Number one is a sort of deal origination, sort of bureaus versus direct. And then the second piece is the weirdness of speaking in terms of the economics, where it's interesting, theoretically, when you buy, a 6-figure Mercedes, you intuitively know some of the major differences that it has between that and a $20,000 Hyundai. Not so much with speaking. Like, sort of the supply and demand rules are a little goofy. So what's been
Yeah,
your
I'll
experience there?
often get an email where someone will say, "Hey, can you come and speak at this event?" And I say something along the lines of, "I'd love to. I'd be happy to. Here, unfortunately, I can't do so much travel. Here's the sort of standard rates." And
Yeah.
someone will say, "Oh, but we, found someone else that was willing to take, 1/10 of that amount. Can you speak for that?" And it's like, well, first of all, I'm honored that you reached out. Like, I would love to help. And if you were, my next door neighbor and all I had to do was walk out my door, walk to your house, I would be happy to do that event for free, right? I mean,
Right.
and I think
Right.
this is actually, and probably many people have talked about it, but I think this is the challenge where I feel really bad about turning people down, because it's not about the money, right? But in some sense, you can't do everything. And so the money ends up being a way to choose, if you have a limited number of time, there's teaching, there's research, there's family, you can only be on the road so much time. And so you kind of have to prioritize those events that either pay more or that are closer to your sort of own beliefs. And so I certainly take on
Sure.
some events for free and some
Yeah.
consulting projects for free, pro bono, if they fit with kind of my worldview. But the challenge is, when someone reaches out when you've kind of tapped out that bucket and they say, well, why should we take you rather than someone else? You kind of say, well, it's really up to you. I think
Yeah.
I add a lot of
Right.
value, and and my clients believe I add a lot of value. Talk to them, but at a certain point, if you think that someone that's 1/10 of the cost is going to provide this amount of value, it's really up to you.
Well, and I think the other side of that is, and this is where I was alluding to before, the higher your price point gets due to market forces and credibility and all that, the easier it is. I mean, if someone says to me, "Oh, hey, Peter, what's the easiest way to generate $50,000 worth of speaking revenue?" I'd say I'd find a speaker that's worth 50K and sell them once versus a $5,000 speaker and have to sell that 10 times, just in terms of the level of sophistication of the buyer, the associations, like you said, you go to your dentist and you need services done. You wouldn't say to the dentist, "Oh, but there's a guy down the road that'll do it for
Yeah.
5 cents on the
Yeah.
dollar." And what do you think, Doc? Like
Yeah.
it just wouldn't happen. So, but go back to the bureau versus booking direct. What's your experience been? Has it changed? Sort of where do deals originate from for you?
Yeah, so most deals originate through the bureau. I get some direct that I then manage and then kick them back a portion
Sure.
of that. And, have been generally happy with them over the years. Obviously, any relationship can be a little bumpy. There are
Sure.
better
Yep.
patches and there are worse patches. But I think the one thing that I've seen loud and clear is that they have to understand you, and the value you're providing and how you can help clients. And I think that's really on you as a speaker. I think early on I had this notion of, oh, I'll just be on their list of folks. And
Yeah.
if I have a good relationship with the management team, that'll get events. But, you may have a great relationship with the management team, but it's not the management team that's selling you, right? It's the
So
individual salespeople.
I think that's a key piece because people, to me, one is the market's changed and more businesses being booked direct. That's just the market. Anytime there's an intermediary involved, the internet's going to sort of make that job more difficult. However, the bureaus are important, but I think you have to look at that as sort of a 1-2 punch. Is step one, invest in building that sales channel for you, getting the listings, getting up there, et cetera. But then underneath that, if you're just going to sort of be passive and say, "Oh, but I'm, my smiling face is on 8 websites, that must be doing the work," right? Underneath that, how many agents do they have? And it's where the rubber meets the road to say, can you develop an actual real relationship, like pick up the phone and call and talk to and communicate with the agents and help them help you? I mean, it sounds a little soft, but like teach them the bullet points that they need to bring to the table to explain to a client when they see these things. Jonah's the right guy to pitch, right? So that's where the difference is made in my experience.
Yeah, certainly. And, I teach marketing at the Wharton School, so I think a lot about the customer. And
Yep.
this is, again, a situation where, understanding the customer, understanding what those customer needs are. Even as a speaker, I always assumed, really where you add value is giving a great speech on stage. And I soon learned that, yeah, that's some of the value to the
Yeah.
attendees, but your other customer is the meeting planner. And the meeting planner cares if you're X number of hours there in advance, if there are
Yep.
no travel delays, if they know where you are, if they can reach you at any time of day or night. Their anxiety is allayed. And so that's another
Yes.
customer that has a different set of needs. And so you may give a great talk, but, I think one person said it to me nicely, they love booking a certain speaker because that person's spouse comes with them and attends all the events. And that's their favorite part of booking that speaker. And, sometimes it's what you do on stage, but sometimes it's all the other things that really add value.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. So let's stay there for a minute, because I think you're missing. I'm not missing. I think you're hitting on some key points that people often overlook unintentionally. So number one is, yes, the stage work is obviously critical, right? That's table stakes that you're awesome on stage. But there is a difference, and a speaker has to serve two masters. You know, the user, the butt in the seat, who may have volunteered or voluntold to be there, right? Whatever, and the buyer. And I think, oftentimes they're more focused on, lighting up the audience, and they're ignoring the stressors and the needs of the buyer. They're a pain in the butt to deal with. They send a contract and it's, oh, here's a long list of my travel requirements, and I need a suite on the left-hand side of the hotel, 7 steps away from the elevator, and all this sort of nonsense. That's not a good customer experience that you're creating, right? So I think, can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're articulating, if any of your listeners work in sort of a business-to-business environment, that's a traditional kind of business-to-business setup, right? The buyer and the consumer are different people.
Yep.
The person that's working in procurement or signing the contract or putting the money forward is not the same person using the service. And,
Sure.
and that's the same thing here. And that was certainly something that took me, and I'm still learning today, right? Something that took me a while to learn, where I spent a lot of time focusing on the on-stage stuff and just assumed as long as I did a fine job on the rest, that was enough. But really figuring out, what makes that buyer comfortable? What does that buyer need? What will provide the best ongoing relationship for them becomes quite important as well. And understanding them as a second audience and understanding that audience's needs as a second customer for success.
Yep. And I think, the reality is it's a small world, and reputations, word gets around if you're high maintenance or whatever. The other thing I would say on the speaking side is, you mentioned or alluded to it a bit earlier. Sometimes as a speaker, it's easy to get bored saying, oh my God, I've done this 20 or 30 times. But you have to realize today, right now at 2:00 in Arizona, or whatever, this is the first time I'm bringing this message to life to these people. And this is really an important meeting to them. And I have an obligation to have the fire in the belly, and not phone it in.
Yeah, and think about, what is, and every talk I give is customized. And sometimes people laugh and say, no, how can that be? But every talk I give, at least something about it is customized to the audience. It may not be every slide, but, I try to understand really well, who is that person in the audience? What are their concerns?
Yep.
And how can I best connect this material to them? And that's, again, why I love the questions, because I think in the pre-work, I'm doing my best to connect it to them. But I love seeing the wheels turn. I love them figuring out, how do I apply this in my context? And I think the questions is really the exciting part. I think it separates people that are just delivering content from people who really know and understand their subject matter, and are really excited about engaging with the audience of that subject.
Yep. And then you mentioned earlier, and I want to push on it for a moment, the learning experience, right? So, I mean, the life of a speaker in a typical month, you might be talking to supply chain in, industrial something, and then a cloud-based tech company, and then a CPG company, and then, Facebook or something like that, right? And it's like, you become not an expert, but to do the job well, you have to really understand, okay, so what are they struggling with? What are they doing? What are they working? And that's actually a lot of fun to sort of go all over the place, because most people are sort of stuck in an industry that's got sort of the same constraints and struggles and successes over and over and over again, but having that sort of buffet of interesting stuff to deal with every month.
It's just been amazing to see, the same challenges across different industries, and really learn about so many different industries. I have some business experience, but I haven't worked in 10 different industries for 5 different years, and it's been amazing to see what's going on in different spaces, to learn from those different spaces, to bring that information back into working with other clients, and really, see the same trends or same challenges from very different angles. I think can help you come up with different solutions. I was recently working with a commercial real estate company, and that had the same sort of underlying challenge that a fleet management company was having, and I've really learned a lot from those comparisons that I think I couldn't have gotten anywhere else.
Awesome. Let's talk about consulting, because that's sort of the other leg in the stool, right? So tell us about the ideal consulting engagements you look for, the ones that you say no to, and what is it about consulting that's interesting to you, both from a business standpoint, from a profitability standpoint, as well as intrinsically?
I think, if speaking gives you some learning, consulting gives you even more learning. That's a
Sure.
chance to really dive in. There's more depth there. Anytime I do a consulting project, I do a bunch of background, sort of what I'll call customer insight work of understanding,
Yep.
who is that customer, whatever the customer, maybe even if they're not a customer, if they're a patient, whatever it might be. And so I love those projects just to learn more about a space. Originally I was very tentative about taking projects that were anything beyond sort of squarely within my wheelhouse. But
Mm-hmm.
over the years, I've been able to take projects that are not just kind of things I'd done already in a different industry, but things that were both some of what I'd done already and some new things, allowing me really to learn new things and sort of push my own boundaries, collaborate with others, outside my own personal
Mm-hmm.
team if needed to bring in. And so I've really loved those assignments as a way to learn more and grow my skill set.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's like another form of learning, right? If you look at life through the lens of everything's an opportunity to learn something, speaking is sort of a 101, in an organization, and consulting is sort of the master's level. You got to go deep and give them insights that they didn't have.
Oh yeah, a few years ago I did a project with dry cleaners, and again, you'd say dry cleaners. Oh, there's nothing that exciting about dry. There's lots of exciting stuff in
Right.
dry cleaning as an industry, in understanding what it's like to be a customer of dry cleaners. And so, I think as long as you're relatively curious and sort of willing to push yourself a little bit, I think there's lots of exciting work out there.
Got it. So the last area I want to touch on for a moment or two, because I think I would be remiss if I didn't, is given that you sold over 1 million books and your books are in print in over 35 countries around the world, give us your take on the landscape of the publishing universe now for folks out there in terms of what's changing, what has changed, what's coming up around the horizon. How do you work well with a publisher? Like just all maybe a couple minutes on your experience as a successful published author.
Yeah, so I've been with Simon and Schuster for 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
They just helped launch my most recent one, The Catalyst. They've been really on board with this last one. I really appreciate kind of all the help that they put in.
Sure.
But I think it's a challenging marketplace, both for publishers and for authors. Publishers are trying to think about how do we deal with the media landscape. It's harder and harder to get mainstream media coverage these days
Mm-hmm.
because there are more and more people with more and more content out there. And so it's certainly a challenging space. I think it's been interesting to see, some alternative publishing models coming out,
Yep. Yep.
places where people are saying, look, it's actually better for me to self-publish a book or pay to print the book and then do something with it, or, only do an audio version of the book. We've actually done quite well on the audio sales of the book, which is something I wouldn't have thought
Interesting.
initially.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, one thing that I talk a lot about with friends that are published authors, as well as people that are thinking about publishing, is what are you hoping to get out of publishing a book? Because I think that's a question that many people either don't ask themselves or not honest with themselves about. One answer is, hey, I want to make money. Another answer is, hey, I don't care about making money on the book, but I want to do more speaking and consulting. Another answer is, hey, I don't care about making money on the book, but I want to become more famous. Another answer is, hey, I want to get more public visibility so I can
Mm-hmm.
do op-eds and things like that. And so really understanding kind of what you want to do and what you like doing and what you don't like doing and what you don't care as much about, I think is really important. I actually didn't realize that speaking consulting would come out of writing a book. I was excited about kind of getting research out there. That was my initial goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But depending on what you're hoping to do, there are different models that may be better. You may prefer going, well, look, I'll just self-publish a book because that way I can control the rights, and I'll give it
Sure.
out when I do events. And that's the best way to do what I'm trying to do. You may say, look, I want to use a regular traditional publisher because that'll give me a seal of approval, which will help me with my consulting clients, but I don't care about selling many actual physical books. I think the
Sure.
more
Sure.
honest you are with yourself about sort of what you're hoping to get out of it and what you're willing to put in, the better you can match those two together to make sure what you actually do fits your needs.
Well, and I just to layer on that, Jonah, I think the key piece is being really clear, which quite frankly, a lot of first-time authors, even second-time authors, aren't around your goals, your objectives, et cetera, with the book. And then from there, making informed decisions around the right path. Because, like you said, there are certain folks where, if they sold 2,000 books, that would be a wild success for them in that context with those goals, with whatever. For someone else, that might be a miserable failure, right? And then your goals and objectives need to drive the decisions you make as to whether you go the traditional publisher, hybrid publisher, audio only, all the different options that you have. So I think that's
Yeah,
great.
and certainly, and also, who are you writing a book for? Are you writing a book for
Exactly.
yourself, and
Yep.
you want to write a book that you're an expert on, and you want to see it out there, or are you writing a book for an audience where you're saying this audience needs this book, and I'm willing to go learn what it takes to write this book, even if I don't know it already. And those are two very different approaches that lead to two very different books.
Exactly. Well, this has been great. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you sharing your experience with us. And I also appreciate your work. I'm a big fan of your work as well. So a
Well,
little,
thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat.
great. Good talking to you.
Okay,
Thanks.
talk to you later. Bye-bye.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.